Christmas Eve snow fell like ash on the depot platform. Clara Hayes sat alone on the frozen bench, carpetbag at her feet, hands folded in her lap to keep them from shaking. The last train had gone. The station master had locked the office. No one was coming. She'd believed the letter. A teaching position in Montana Territory. Room and board included. Starting after the new year. She'd spent her last dollars on the train fare west, carrying everything she owned in one worn bag. Now the promised job didn't exist. The address led nowhere. Another lie. Another man who'd made promises he never intended to keep. The wind cut through her wool coat. Church bells rang in the distance, their hymn drifting across the empty street. Silent Night. She used to love that song. Her stomach growled. She'd eaten nothing since yesterday's stale bread, saving her coins for what she'd thought would be her first week in a new life. Now those coins were gone too, spent on a cup of coffee she'd nursed for 2 hours while waiting for someone who would never arrive. Clara wrapped her shawl tighter and stared at the lamp burning beside her. Its flame trembled in the wind but held steady. She thought about praying, but the words felt hollow in her mouth. She'd prayed before when Thomas had courted her back east, when he'd whispered promises, when his father had called her a liar and thrown her into the street. Out here, you stand tall or get buried low, she whispered to herself. Words she'd overheard from a cowboy on the train. They'd stuck with her. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not where anyone passing might see her shame. The snow thickened. Her breath came out in white clouds. She closed her eyes and pulled her carpetbag closer, holding it like a companion. If she could just survive until morning. Maybe the station master would let her sweep floors for a warm corner and a meal. Maybe. The lamp flickered once, then steadied. Clara opened her eyes and watched her shadow dance against the platform boards. Somewhere in town, families were gathering for Christmas Eve dinners. Somewhere, children were hanging stockings. Somewhere, people had homes to return to. She had a bench and a lie, but she'd survived worse. She'd survived this too. Samuel Cross walked past the depot with his daughter's hand in his. He hadn't wanted to attend Christmas Eve service, but Lily insisted. Now he wanted only to get home, close the door, and survive another holiday. 2 years. 2 years since Margaret had died holding their stillborn son. 2 years since he'd felt anything but the weight of breathing. Papa. Someone's there. Lily's voice pulled him from his thoughts. She'd stopped walking and was pointing toward the depot platform, where a single lamp burned beside a figure on the bench. Samuel's jaw tightened. Not our concern. Come on. But Lily didn't move. She stared at him with her mother's eyes dark and steady and impossibly kind. At 6 years old, she already knew how to make him feel like a coward. He exhaled slowly, his breath fogging the air. Stay close. They approached the platform. The woman sat perfectly still, carpetbag at her feet, hands folded like she was holding herself together by will alone. When Samuel's boots creaked on the wooden steps, she lifted her head. She was young, maybe mid-20s. Her face was pale from cold, but her eyes were clear, no tears, no pleading, just exhaustion and something harder underneath. Pride, maybe, or stubbornness. Samuel touched the brim of his hat. Ma'am, you waiting on someone? She tried to smile. It didn't reach her eyes. They didn't come. It's Christmas Eve, Lily said, stepping forward before Samuel could stop her. You can't sleep here. It's too cold. She looked up at her father. Tell her. Papa. Samuel felt the trap closing. He could walk away, pretend he'd never seen her. But Lily would remember, and worse. He would remember. Margaret would have stopped without hesitation. We have a spare room, he said, the words stiff in his mouth. Just for tonight. The woman's eyes widened slightly. She looked from him to Lily, then back again. For a moment, he thought she'd refuse. Part of him hoped she would. Just tonight, she said finally. I'm grateful. You can sleep in Mama's sewing room, Lily said, her face brightening. Samuel flinched. The woman noticed but said nothing. He picked up her carpet bag. It was heavier than he'd expected everything she owned. Probably. The thought made his chest ache in a way he didn't want to examine. I'm Samuel Cross, he said. This is Lily, Clara Hayes. They walked into the falling snow, 3 silhouettes moving through lamplight. Lily took Clara's hand naturally, chattering about Christmas and cookies and the songs they'd sung at church. Samuel watched them from the corner of his eye. Margaret's hand had been small like that, warm and trusting. He looked away and kept walking. A man's word is his bond. He'd given his word. He'd see this through. One night. Then she'd leave. And his life could return to the quiet grief he'd learned to carry. The house was tidy as a church and just as silent. Clara stood in the doorway while Samuel lit lamps, each flame pushing back shadows but revealing emptiness. The furniture was well made and carefully arranged, but the space felt cold despite the fire burning in the hearth. No Christmas greenery. No decorations except crayon drawings tacked to the walls, a child's desperate attempt to bring color to grief. I'll show you. Lily tugged Clara's hand, pulling her toward the drawings. I made these for Papa, to remember Mama loved Christmas. See, that's our tree. That's Mama's star. That's Lily. Samuel's voice was quiet but firm. Let Miss Hayes settle in. The child's enthusiasm dimmed. She nodded and released Clara's hand. Samuel crossed to a door off the main room and opened it. It's clean. Should be warm enough. Clara stepped inside. A narrow bed, a small table, a window with faded curtains, and on the table a sewing basket filled with thread and fabric scraps. A half-finished quilt lay folded in the corner, its pattern only partially visible. Dust lined the windowsill. This wasn't a spare room. This was a shrine. Thank you, Clara said. It's more than I expected. Samuel nodded once and left, pulling the door closed behind him. Clara stood motionless, listening to his footsteps retreat. She heard him speaking low to Lily in the next room, heard the child's sleepy protests, heard him carry her to bed. Then silence. She unpacked slowly. One spare dress, a small Bible her mother had given her, a handkerchief embroidered with daisies, the last thing she'd made before leaving home. She set them on the table beside the sewing basket, careful not to disturb anything. The room smelled faintly of lavender, the dead woman's scent. Probably. Clara wondered what she'd been like. Kind. If Lily's drawings were any indication, loved. Certainly. Clara knelt beside the bed and folded her hands. The words came easier than she'd expected. Thank you for this mercy. Help me be worthy of it. She didn't know Samuel was standing in the hallway, his hand on the doorframe, eyes closed. Didn't know he'd heard those exact words every night for 5 years. Margaret's prayer. Every single night. He pulled his hand back and returned to his own room where Lily had climbed into his bed, refusing her own as she had since her mother died. Samuel lay down beside his daughter and stared at the ceiling. Margaret. He whispered to the dark. Forgive me. I don't know what I'm doing. Across the hall. Clara's breathing slowed into sleep. The house held them, all 3 strangers bound by loneliness and the chance collision of need and mercy. Outside, snow continued to fall. Inside, the fire burned low. And in the sewing room, dust motes drifted through lamplight, settling over the past like a blessing or a warning. Home ain't a place, Clara thought as sleep finally claimed her. It's the people you'd ride through hell to get back to. She just didn't have people anymore. But for tonight, she had a roof, and that was something. Clara woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of silence. Morning light filtered through the faded curtains. She dressed quickly, braided her hair, and opened the door to find the main room empty. The fire had been stoked recently. Coffee sat warming on the stove. But no Samuel, no Lily. Through the window, she saw Samuel outside with the horses. Lily was still asleep in the other room. She could hear the child's soft breathing. Clara made a decision. She found flour, lard, a jar of preserves on the shelf. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, measuring and mixing. Biscuits took shape under her fingers. She cracked eggs from the coop outside, scrambled them with a bit of milk. By the time Lily appeared in her nightgown, rubbing her eyes, breakfast was ready. The child stopped in the doorway. Her eyes went wide. "You cook like Mama!" Before Clara could respond, Lily ran forward and wrapped her arms around Clara's waist. The embrace was sudden and fierce and full of a need so raw it made Clara's throat tighten. The door opened. Samuel stepped inside, stamping snow from his boots. He froze when he saw them, his daughter clinging to this stranger. His kitchen filled with the smell of biscuits and coffee and something he'd thought was gone forever. Life. Lily released Clara and ran to him. "Papa, she made breakfast, real breakfast." Samuel's expression was unreadable. He hung his coat on the hook, removed his hat, and crossed to the table. Clara served the plates in silence. They sat. For a moment. No one spoke. "It's good," Samuel said finally. "Thank you." "You're welcome." They ate. Lily chattered between bites about Christmas and snow and whether Santa could find them way out here. Samuel listened without responding, but his eyes kept drifting to Clara. After breakfast, Lily disappeared and returned clutching something behind her back. "I made you something," she announced, thrusting a folded paper toward Clara. Clara opened it carefully. A drawing 3 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun, one tall, one medium, one small, all smiling. Clara's eyes stung. "It's beautiful." "That's you." Lily pointed to the medium figure. "That's Papa." "That's me. We're a family." Samuel's fork clattered against his plate. He stood abruptly. "Lily, that's Miss Hayes is just visiting." The joy drained from the child's face. She looked at the drawing, then at Clara, then at her father. "But she's here now," Lily whispered. "For now." Samuel's voice was gentle but firm. He retrieved something from a shelf, wool gloves, too fine for working hands. He set them beside Clara's plate. "Storm's coming tomorrow. Roads'll be impassable. Stay through New Year. After that," he didn't finish. Clara understood. After that, she'd leave. This was temporary. Everything in her life was temporary. "Thank you," she said. "I accept." Lily brightened immediately and ran to her room. Samuel began clearing dishes. They worked in silence, moving around each other in the small space. At one point, their hands brushed, reaching for the same plate. Both pulled back. "You don't have to keep me out of charity," Clara said quietly. Samuel paused. "Charity's when you give to someone you don't know. You're here now." It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't even particularly warm, but it was something. Clara folded Lily's drawing carefully and tucked it in her pocket. Through the window, she could see dark clouds gathering on the horizon. "Coffee's weak, but it's honest," she thought, looking at the cup in Samuel's hand. "Like most folks ought to be. Maybe staying a few more days wouldn't hurt. Maybe." 3 days passed like a slow thaw. Clara fell into the rhythm of the household, cooking, mending, teaching Lily her letters by the fire. Samuel worked outside mostly, repairing fence lines and tending stock, but evenings brought them together. The 3 of them circling each other with careful politeness. The storm came and went. The roads remained impassable, buried under 2 feet of snow. New Year's Eve arrived. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep mid-sentence over her primer, neither Samuel nor Clara moved to carry her to bed. They sat by the fire, the space between them charged with words unspoken. The wind rattled the windows like impatient fists. Inside, the fire held steady. "How'd you come west?" Samuel asked finally, his voice low. Clara studied her hands. She'd known this question would come eventually. I was promised a teaching position. It was a lie. Why would someone do that? Because I believed another lie first. She looked up, meeting his eyes. Back east, a man courted me, an employer's son. He said he'd marry me. When I refused his advances, he told his father I'd tried to seduce him. They dismissed me, spread rumors. No one would hire me. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. The teaching position here was supposed to be my second chance. Turned out to be just another man who enjoyed lying to desperate women. Samuel's jaw tightened. That's not right. No, but it's real. She managed a bitter smile. I thought the frontier might judge less harshly. Silence stretched between them. The fire popped. My wife died in childbirth, Samuel said suddenly. 2 years ago, Christmas night. The baby a son, he didn't make it either. His voice cracked. I haven't celebrated Christmas since. Lily draws those pictures trying to remind me how. Clara's chest ached. I'm sorry. Margaret loved Christmas, loved everything, really. She had this way of seeing good in people even when they disappointed her. He stared into the fire. I keep thinking if I just hold on to her memory hard enough, it won't fade. But Lily's forgetting. She can't remember her mother's voice anymore. Grief doesn't dishonor love, Samuel, Clara said softly. But neither does living. Their hands rested near each other on the hearthstones. So close. Clara could feel the heat radiating from his skin. Samuel pulled back first, standing abruptly. I should check the horses. In the middle of the night, in this storm, they need checking. He grabbed his coat and fled into the cold. The door slammed behind him. Clara sat alone, tears finally spilling down her cheeks, through the window. She saw lamplight moving in the barn. He was hiding. From her. From himself. From the impossible possibility that something broken might still be mended. Lily stirred in her sleep. Don't go, Miss Clara, she murmured. Clara wiped her eyes and whispered to the empty room. Sometimes the bravest thing is to stay, but she didn't know if she believed it anymore. Outside, Samuel leaned against the barn wall, breath coming hard. His hands shook, not from cold. He'd almost touched her, almost reached for her, almost betrayed everything he'd promised Margaret. The land don't lie, neither should a man. But what was the truth? That he was falling for a stranger. That his daughter needed a mother. That he was tired, so tired of carrying grief alone he didn't know. And that terrified him most of all. Sunday arrived clear and bitterly cold. Lily insisted they attend service. Samuel agreed, though he regretted it the moment they walked through the church doors. Every eye turned. Every whisper started. The church house was warm with bodies and cold with judgment. Samuel felt both as he walked the aisle with Clara beside him and Lily between. They found a pew near the back. The pastor began his sermon. But Samuel couldn't focus. He could feel the stares boring into his neck. Mrs. Martha Brennan sat 2 rows ahead, her back rigid with disapproval. She'd been Margaret's closest friend. She'd also made it clear after the funeral that Samuel should remarry within a year someone suitable. Someone local, someone she approved of. Clara Hayes was none of those things. After the service, people filed out slowly. Samuel tried to leave quickly, but Mrs. Brennan intercepted him on the church steps. Samuel. Her voice was ice dressed as concern. A word. Clara took Lily's hand. We'll wait by the wagon. Mrs. Brennan watched them go, then turned her full attention to Samuel. Propriety. Samuel. The child needs stability, not scandal. There's no scandal. Miss Hayes needed help. I provided a roof. That's Christian charity. Christian charity doesn't involve unmarried women living under your roof for weeks. She leaned closer. People are talking. Margaret hasn't been gone 3 years. And already I'm what? His voice was low and dangerous. Being kind to someone who was left to freeze on Christmas Eve. Giving my daughter a chance to smile again. What exactly am I doing wrong? Mrs. Brennan's expression softened slightly. I'm not saying you're wrong to help. I'm saying be careful how it looks. For Lily's sake. Samuel had no response. She was right. He knew she was right. He nodded stiffly and walked away. The ride home was silent. Lily sensed the tension and stayed quiet. Clara stared at her hands. Samuel focused on the reins, at the house. Clara prepared lunch. No one ate much. Samuel retreated to the barn. Clara cleaned dishes that didn't need cleaning. Lily drew pictures in her room. Evening came too quickly. Samuel returned as Clara was setting out cold supper. Lily met him at the door. I love her, Papa. The words hit him like a fist. Clara froze at the stove. You don't understand, Samuel said carefully. Your Mama would want you to be happy. Lily's voice broke. You always say she was kind. She wouldn't want you to be sad forever. Samuel couldn't find words. He looked past his daughter to where Clara stood. Back turned, shoulders tight. Lily, go to your room! But now! The child ran, crying. Her door slammed. Samuel stood in the kitchen, hands hanging useless at his sides. Clara turned to face him. I'll leave in the morning. She said quietly. Clara. No. She held up a hand. Mrs. Brennan is right. I'm causing problems. You've been kind. More than kind. But I won't be the reason your daughter suffers. She walked to the sewing room and closed the door. Samuel stood alone in the kitchen. The house was silent except for Lily's muffled sobs. He'd failed. Failed his daughter. Failed Clara. Failed Margaret's memory. Out here. You stand tall or get buried low. He was being buried. And he was letting it happen. He grabbed his coat and walked out into the freezing night. Unable to bear the walls closing in, Clara didn't sleep. She packed her carpet bag by lamplight. Every item folded with care. She'd leave before dawn. Spare Samuel and Lily the awkwardness of goodbyes. She pulled out Lily's drawing, the 3 figures holding hands. She'd keep it. A reminder that for a few days. She'd almost believed in belonging. She wrote a note and left it on the kitchen table. Thank you for your kindness. I'll not be a burden to your conscience. Shoo at 5 a.m. She lifted her bag and opened the door. A small figure stood in the hallway. Lily, in her nightgown. Eyes red from crying. You're leaving like everyone else. Clara's heart broke. She knelt down. Your papa needs space to honor your mama. I understand that. But Mama's not here and you are... Lily's voice rose. Papa keeps saying he's waiting for Mama to come back. But she can't. And now you're leaving too because he's scared. Lily. No. The child ran past her towards Samuel's room. Papa, she's leaving. Clara stood frozen at the door, bag in hand. Samuel appeared in his doorway, hair disheveled, shirt half-buttoned. He saw Clara, saw the bag. Understanding flooded his face. Lily threw herself at him. Papa? You're doing it again, pushing away anyone who could love us because you're scared. Samuel stared at his daughter, at Clara, at the life he'd been hiding from. He remembered Margaret's final words, her hand in his, growing cold, the baby silent in the midwife's arms. Promise me you'll let Lily have a full life. Don't let grief make you selfish. He'd broken that promise. For 2 years, he'd locked both of them in a tomb of memory. I can't ask you to stay, he said, voice raw. Clara's hand tightened on the latch. She didn't turn around. Then don't ask, she whispered. Let me choose. Silence stretched. Lily held her breath. Clara. Her name. Just her name. But everything in his voice. She turned. Samuel crossed the room slowly. He stopped in front of her, close enough to see tears on her cheeks. I've been a coward, he said, hiding behind Margaret's memory instead of honoring it. His voice shook. She told me to give Lily a full life, but I can't do that alone anymore. I don't want to do it alone. Clara's bag slipped from her fingers. If you'll stay, Samuel continued, I'd like to try. To live again. He couldn't finish. Lily moved between them, taking both their hands. Please. Clara looked at the child, at Samuel's face, hope and fear battling behind his eyes. Sometimes the bravest thing is to stay. Yes, she said. I'll stay. Lily threw her arms around them both. Samuel's hand found Clara's, squeezing gently. Through the window. Dawn broke New Year's Day, arriving in shades of gold and pink. The land don't lie, neither should a man. Samuel thought truth was frightening. But so was dying slowly in the dark. They stood together as morning light filled the room. 3 people choosing courage over fear, hope over grief, tomorrow over yesterday. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't solved. But it was a beginning, and that was enough. New Year's Day dawned clear and bright. Clara woke in the sewing room she'd insisted on maintaining propriety, and Samuel had agreed. But the air felt different now. Lighter, like a weight had been lifted from the rafters. She dressed and found Samuel already in the kitchen, attempting to make coffee. He looked up when she entered. I'm doing it wrong, aren't I? Clara smiled. A little. May I? They worked together, his hands steady as she showed him the right ratio of grounds to water. Their shoulders brushed. Neither pulled away. Lily bounded in, full of energy. It's a new year. Miss Clara's staying. Can we have pancakes? They ate together, the conversation easier than it had been in days. After breakfast, Samuel cleared his throat. I'd like to court you proper, he said, meeting Clara's eyes. If you're willing, courting means he wants to marry you eventually. Lily stage whispered. That's what Mrs. Brennan told Mama when Papa was courting her. Clara's cheeks warmed. I'd like that. But first, Samuel stood. There's something I need to show you, both of you. He led them to the sewing room and opened Margaret's hope chest. Inside lay the unfinished quilt, its pattern half-formed, edges raw where the work had stopped. Margaret was making this for our second child, Samuel said quietly. She never finished it. I couldn't touch it. Couldn't let it go. He looked at Clara. Would you finish it for Lily? To honor her? Clara's throat tightened. Are you certain? I'm certain that Margaret would want her memory to bring life, not death. That she'd want Lily wrapped in love, not grief. His voice broke. I'm certain that maybe you could teach me to live again? Clara took his hand. I'd be honored. They spent the afternoon together, spreading the quilt across the table. Samuel held fabric while Clara stitched. Lily added her own crooked stitches, laughing when they went astray. Samuel told stories about Margaret not with pain now, but with gratitude. She loved yellow flowers. He said, daisies especially. Said they were cheerful even in hard times. Clara pulled out her handkerchief embroidered with daisies. Like this. Samuel stared at it. Just like that. She would have liked you. I wish I could have known her. She'd want you here. I know that now. Evening approached. Samuel stood suddenly. Tomorrow's Sunday. We'll go to church again. Together. And if anyone has words, they'll hear mine first. Clara touched his arm. Are you sure I can leave quietly if... I'm done with quiet, he said. And I'm done with leaving. Sunday came. They dressed carefully. Lily wore her best dress. Clara wore the only good dress she owned. Samuel shaved and put on his church clothes. They walked into the church house together. Mrs. Brennan sat in her usual pew. She saw them and opened her mouth to speak. But before she could, old Henry Doyle stood from the back, a man in his 70s, respected by everyone. Enough, Martha, he said, his voice carrying, this is a man choosing life over death. That's holy work. Silence fell. People looked at each other uncertainly. The pastor stepped forward. Mr. Doyle is right. The Lord honors those who honor his gift of second chances. He nodded to Samuel. Welcome. Not everyone smiled. Not everyone approved. But enough people nodded. Enough hands reached out after the service. Enough voices offered quiet congratulations. It wasn't perfect acceptance, but it was a start. Walking home. Lily skipped between them, holding both their hands. She sang one of her made-up songs about snow and sunshine and families. Samuel and Clara exchanged glances over her head. Tentative. Hopeful. Mercy arrives quiet. Like first snow. Clara thought. And sometimes it arrives exactly when you've stopped looking for it. Thank you, she said softly. Samuel squeezed her hand. For what? For being brave enough to let me stay. I think, he said, we're both being brave. They walked on. 3 people learning what it meant to build a home from broken pieces. The sun was warm on their faces. Spring would come soon, and they would face it together. January passed into February. The house transformed in ways too small to name and too large to miss. Clara's shawl hung on the hook beside Samuel's coat. Her books lined the shelf. Lily's laughter filled rooms that had been silent for 2 years. The house breathed now, where before it had only stood. They settled into routines. Morning coffee together. Clara teaching Lily to read while Samuel worked outside. Evening meals around the table. Trading stories about their days. Margaret's quilt grew slowly, all 3 of them adding pieces. Samuel courted Clara properly walks in the afternoon when weather allowed. Conversations by the fire. Stolen glances across the table. He brought her wildflowers he found near the creek. She mended his shirts without being asked. Small gestures. Steady and sincere. One evening in late February, as they sat working on the quilt, Lily spoke up. Is Miss Clara our family now? Samuel looked at Clara. She looked back. If she'll have us, he said. I already said yes, Clara replied softly. Lily grinned and returned to her stitching. Samuel's hand found Clara's beneath the table. She laced her fingers through his. They sat that way for a long time, not speaking, just being. Later that night, after Lily was asleep, they stood on the porch watching the sunset paint the snow gold and pink. The air was still cold, but there was a softness to it now, a promise of thaw. What made you stay? Samuel asked. That morning, you could have gone. Clara considered the question. I stayed because someone finally offered me a home, not just shelter. And now I stay because this is home. Because you and Lily are home. She smiled. Because I choose this. Choose you. Choose tomorrow. Samuel pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. She rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Home ain't a place, he whispered. It's the people you'd ride through hell to get back to. Then I'm home, she said. Inside. Lily appeared in the doorway holding something. Look, I found it in the shed. It was the lamp from the depot, the one that had burned beside Clara on Christmas Eve. It still works, Lily said. Delighted. Samuel took it from her and lit the wick. The flame caught, burned steady. Together, the 3 of them placed it in the front window, a sign to travelers, a beacon saying here is warmth, here is welcome, here is home. They stood at the window, watching the lamplight reflect off the snow. Samuel had one arm around Clara, the other holding Lily. The child yawned and leaned against them both, content. Clara thought about the woman who'd sat alone on a frozen platform, convinced she'd survive but never truly live. That woman seemed impossibly distant now. She thought about Samuel, locked in grief, slowly dying in a house that had become a tomb. About Lily, trying desperately to remind her father that joy still existed. They'd all been broken, all been lost, but broken things could be mended, lost things could be found. The lamp burned steady in the window, its light spilling out into the dusk. Inside, 3 people sat by the fire, not perfect, not without past sorrows, but choosing each other, choosing tomorrow. Lily fell asleep against Clara's shoulder, thumb in her mouth. Samuel covered her with Margaret's finished quilt yellow daisies sewn into the border, Clara's work beside Margaret's, both honoring the same child. Clara rested her head back, eyes closing. Samuel watched them, both his daughter. This woman who'd come out of Christmas snow like an answered prayer he'd been too afraid to speak. Outside, the frost began to soften. The air smelled different, warmer. Inside, a family breathed its first full breath. Samuel leaned down and kissed Clara's forehead. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For choosing us, for being brave enough to stay." Clara opened her eyes and smiled. "We were brave together." Through the window, the lamp continued to burn. Stars appeared overhead, bright and clear. The kind of night where everything seemed possible. Somewhere in town, church bells rang. Somewhere, snow began to melt. Somewhere, spring was gathering itself to arrive. And in a small house on the edge of the frontier, 3 people who'd been strangers just weeks ago held each other close and believed, truly believed, that tomorrow would be better than yesterday, because mercy arrives quiet, like first snow. Because love doesn't subtract, it multiplies. Because home ain't a place. It's the people you'd ride through hell to get back to. And Clara Hayes had finally come home. Spring was coming, and they would face it together,